Hi everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen. The next page in our taco manual takes us to this super homey dish, super popular in the central part of Mexico, but really you can find it almost everywhere. It is pork that is cooked slowly with tomatoes. I'm using some chipotle in this particular version, though some people make it with green chilies. But the star of the show is this. This is verdolagas. This is purslane in English. It's got a crunchy, sort of almost succulent-like texture to it, but a really delicious lemony taste, and I'm going to show you how to work with that. It's available in almost every Mexican grocery, so if you're thinking that's a bit of an odd stretch for you, go find some and work with it. Those of you that can't find it can make this same dish with spinach, with chard, with kale. It's a lovely pork, tomato, and greens dish. Now we're going to start here. I've got a pan that is heating here a little bit because I like to heat the pan ahead of time. And I'm going to turn it onto a medium-high heat now. I'm going to do the frying of this in this beautiful fresh rendered pork lard. It's what's going to give it a really beautiful round flavor. But if you don't cook with pork lard, then you could use vegetable oil for this, or even olive oil would be delicious. So we've melted that lard. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt over this pork and just go ahead and put it into the pan here. It's going to need a little bit more of the salt sprinkled over the top of all of this. And you'll notice that when I'm sprinkling the salt, I'm not doing it down here, I'm doing it up here, so that the air itself helps separate the grains of salt and evenly spread over everything. So this is a point at which a lot of people would start trying to move it. And they go, oh, I don't want the pork to stick. All the pork will stick, okay? Right off the bat, it will just simply stick here. So this is the opportunity to let it crust on the bottom and release itself from the pan. So I'm going to let that cook there for just a little bit until it releases itself. And at this point, I'm going to slice up a half of an onion. I like pretty thin slices on this because it will cook into a nice texture that we want for the finished taco filling here. Okay, now I got that part of it ready. I'm going to move that over there and do a very fine chop on this garlic. So you'll notice that what I'm doing first is to slice the garlic, and I'm not lifting up the blade of my knife at all. I'm leaving the tip of it down, and then I'm going to use that same sort of technique, but more in a rock and chop here, and going back and forth across the garlic until I have it very finely chopped. Very finely chopped garlic will give you a beautiful flavor throughout the whole dish, whereas larger pieces will not give you that same kind of full garlic flavor. Let's go in and see where our pork is now. Yeah, it's beginning to brown, but it's not quite there. I'll meet you back here when the pork is all brown. Got some really beautiful browning going on, and for this next step in the recipe, I need to get this pork out of the pan so that I can cook chorizo. So I'm giving this a double whammy, and I will tell you, with the chipotle flavor, that chorizo is just so good. So if you've only had this dish or ever seen this dish as a green chili dish with no chorizo in it, this is just a little minor variation that I think is absolutely spectacular. Okay, so I'm going to turn the temperature down a little bit so that we can cook our chorizo here. And I've got about a half a cup, quarter of a pound of the chorizo and just break it up in the skillet. At the same time, I will put the onion slices in the skillet, and we'll stir this and let it cook for a few minutes until the chorizo is completely done through and the onion has started to brown nicely. Okay, while this is cooking here, we'll make the sauce for this dish. I have a can of fire roasted tomatoes. If it's the middle of the summer for you and you've got beautiful like Roma tomatoes, you could use fresh tomatoes here, but I would roast them ahead of time the way that we would for that really wonderful salsa de molcajete. And I'm going to take a few chipotles, a couple chipotles out of this can here. So I think 2 is the right amount for me, but if you like it extra spicy, then you could put 3 or 4 of these guys in here. And I like to always go in and get some of that tomatoey canning broth there because it's extra smoky and lovely. Okay, so we've got that. And I'm going to blend this into a smooth puree. And then when the chorizo and onions are ready, I'm going to stir in this garlic. That'll just take a minute. And then add the tomato sauce, the meat back, and then we're ready to do the braise. I think the chorizo onion mixture is ready to receive the chopped garlic there. Like I said, this doesn't take much time at all, just about 30-45 seconds to cook the garlic there. Once you chop it up like that, you've released a lot of garlic flavor. So 2 cloves, I can smell it right now. 2 cloves is plenty for this dish because of the way that we finely chopped it there. And now I'm going to put this meat back in here. If there's any juice on the tray, that would be a good thing to mix in as well. And then the last couple things that are going to go in here will be this tomato sauce. And so I'll just pour that in like that. And 3/4 of a cup of water. I'm going to just give it a nice little bit of salt for this braising period, but not enough to season the whole dish. Mix all of this stuff together. And I'm going to put a baking sheet on top of it because I don't have a lid for this pan. So I make my impromptu thing, and then we are ready to let that simmer. That'll take at least an hour for those to get completely, the pieces of meat to get completely tender. We want that. And then we're going to add the verdolagas and some small potatoes to this mixture, making it really satisfying. Okay, we're up now to the vegetables that are going to go into this slow cooked pork. I have those tiny little potatoes that you can buy in a lot of grocery stores that come in different colors like that, and I just cut them in half. I am going to use the microwave to cook them because that is a very easy way to steam them. Just put a little bit of water on them and sprinkle them nicely with salt like that. Now I keep one of these microwave covers here. You might not have that. You could just cover it with plastic wrap and poke a couple of holes in it. And I'm going to let these guys go for 4 minutes there. And it's just a way of steaming the potatoes, and it's super easy when you do it that way. Now we're up to verdolagas. This is the star of this dish. When you go to a Mexican grocery store, this is how you will usually find them. These are cultivated Purslane verdolagas, and a lot of people in Mexico like to have the long stems with them. I think it sort of gets in the way of eating them. So my suggestion always is to go in here about 2 inches below the top and cut around the top of this bunch like that. And this will have some stems, you'll see that, but not real long stems. If there are more leaves in here, just go ahead and pull them out and put those in there. Now, if you're one of those forager type people, you are going to find wild purslane, wild verdolagas, and that stuff is really delicious. In some ways more delicious than this, only because it tends to be more lemony in its flavor, but this is way more accessible. But you can go foraging along pathways and so forth, because the verdolagas really do grow wild everywhere across the United States and certainly across Mexico. Okay, so as soon as those potatoes are ready, we're going to come back here and put everything into the meat mixture and cook it for about 7 minutes or so, just to warm everything up, and to wilt the verdolagas. So I'll see you when those potatoes are ready. Okay, be very careful when you uncover those potatoes, because they will be very steamy hot. Now I poured some water in there to be the steam, and I got to get rid of that before we go on with this recipe here. Okay, so we're ready with these guys. Now let's take a look at what's in here. Okay, so this has now cooked until it's pretty much the consistency that we're going to want it to end up, but I think that's a little bit too dry to cook the verdolagas, so I'm just going to pour a tiny bit of water over all of this. Make sure nothing is sticking in there, and we will take the potatoes and put them in and scoop up all of our verdolagas to go in here as well. Now, I'm just going to let them wilt on the top here, because we're going to trap a bunch of steam in here when we return this to the top. And I'll show you what this looks like in a few minutes, and then I'll stir them in, but I'll just trap the steam in there to cook the verdolagas at the beginning. If you haven't had them, their texture is just so lovely. It's a little bit crunchy because they're a succulent basically, but they have such a really wonderful tangy flavor. I think you're just gonna love the end result of this. Okay, let's take a look here. You can see that all of the verdolagas have now wilted beautifully here. Let's see, I got to grab a big spoon to stir all of this stuff together. Okay, but it has thickened up a little bit too much here. So as I'm stirring that, I'll stir a little bit of water in here. That looks really nice in terms of consistency, not soupy, and it won't run out of your tortilla. I'm going to give this a little bit of salt to start, and then taste what we have going here, and see how much more salt it might need. That was the right amount. It's spicy, wonderfully complex in textures and flavors, partly because of those verdolagas, and I like the meatiness of the potatoes against the pork there. Okay, so I think we're ready to plate this. I've got warm tortillas, and I will lay these guys out on this plate. I'm going to pull this a little toward me here. And then we'll spoon some of the verdolagas with pork and potatoes. It just makes a great entree as well, especially on a cold winter day. And then we've got cheese here. This is queso fresco. Queso añejo would be good here. Any kind of garnishing cheese. And my mouth is watering for this one. So I'm going to have a little taste. This is so incredibly satisfying. One of my favorite things in the traditional Mexican kitchen. Provecho.